She was ice-sculpted in heels. Harper Lynn, the CEO who reigned with precision and a titanium spine. A woman so removed from softness she seemed carved from ambition itself. Money whispered around her like perfume. She was brilliant, aloof, untouchable. And he was no one. A janitor in faded boots and a uniform stitched with time. His name tag read L. Grant, but no one ever read it. They just saw the mop in his hand and moved on. No one noticed the quiet ache in his eyes, or the careful reverence in the way he cleaned things others discarded. He was a ghost among marble and chandeliers. Until that night, in the glittering atrium of the Harper Lynn Cultural Center, beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers and the hum of champagne-soaked conversation, it happened. The world tilted on its axis quietly, but forever. Harper's voice sliced through the golden murmur of the elite like a silver blade. "If you can play Liszt," she said, chin tilted, eyes locked on the janitor kneeling beside the grand Steinway. "I'll kiss you right here." Asterisk asterisk, when a billionaire CEO dares her janitor to play a masterpiece in exchange for a kiss. She has no idea he once commanded concert halls. What begins as a viral stunt will uncover a past of music, loss, and the one performance that could change everything. Asterisk asterisk, if you believe in second chances, love that speaks without words, and music that can heal even the deepest scars. Subscribe now to Soul for Stories and let your heart listen. Asterisk laughter fluttered. Jaws shifted. Someone dropped a fluid bubbly. The air held its breath. He didn't move, didn't rise, just finished polishing the final ivory key with a devotion that felt sacred, not professional. His fingers rough, strong, shaped by a different kind of life lingered on the edge of the instrument like it might remember him too. This man, this nobody, touched that piano not like it was furniture but like it was memory, like it held ghosts he hadn't spoken to in years. The crowd murmured, "That's just Landon." The janitor, he fixes light bulbs. But Harper didn't flinch, and neither did he. Maybe she meant it as a joke, or a dare, or some unconscious cry to be disarmed. Maybe, deep inside, she'd recognized something ancient in his silence, something vast and grief-slicked. Or maybe her arrogance simply got the better of her. It didn't matter. The internet didn't wait for meaning. By midnight, the clip had detonated across every platform. CEO dares janitor, playlist for a kiss, romance, or ridicule, power, privilege, and a piano. People debated, was it humiliation or flirtation, exploitation or curiosity? But no one could stop watching, because when she said it, he didn't laugh, didn't stammer, didn't even look surprised. He just closed the piano lid with a soft, nearly sacred click and walked away, and that was the real beginning. His name was Landon Grant, 42, once a prodigy so fierce they called him the Oklahoma Thunder. By 18, he had graced Carnegie Hall, but World War changes the tempo of a man. He had joined the army, served with honor, until a roadside bomb stole the music from his spine and left shrapnel in more than just flesh. It stole his wife soon. After, grief took the rest. What remained was Lily, their daughter, barely a year old when the silence swallowed everything. Landon had traded tuxedos for night shifts, applause for whispered lullabies. Music became memory, survival became his only song. And yet, he never really stopped hearing the notes. He just buried them deep, beneath duty, beneath pain, until Harper Lynn, in her steel-toed arrogance, cracked something open. Harper, always calculated, always in control, hadn't expected backlash. CEO of Lynn Aerospace, a self-made legacy magnet, she ran her empire like a warship, sleek, indomitable, unsinkable. But behind her poised lips and steel cheekbones was a loneliness so bone deep it didn't have a name. She hadn't meant to provoke something sacred. She just didn't know what sacred looked like anymore until she saw it in his eyes. She watched the clip again and again, the way he moved, the silence in him louder than any concerto. He hadn't reacted like a janitor. He reacted like a fallen monk being asked to return to the altar, and in that stillness, she felt something stir, something foreign, guilt, wonder, hope. Thousands now asked, will he play? Can he still play? Who is he really? Landon didn't care about viral trends, but someone showed him the clip. He watched himself on a stranger's phone kneeling beside the instrument he used to command, her voice echoing in the background like a haunting. It's something ancient inside him stirred, not pride, not revenge, not just longing. That night, when Lily was asleep, he returned, alone in the atrium, moonlight painting the marble silver. Landon sat before the piano like a man kneeling at the foot of an old church. His fingers trembled. He lifted the lid, pressed a single key, then another. Then silence died. It wasn't fear that stilled him. It was reverence. Because to play Liszt again wouldn't just be performance. It would be resurrection. And he would do it not for an audience, not for Harper, for Lily. Harper couldn't sleep. She wasn't used to being haunted. But Landon's silence clung to her like smoke. She researched him, of course. No social media, no interviews, just a service record, a spotless work file, and a name wrapped in dust. But her gut knew. She'd seen enough concert halls to know poise when it stood before her. He hadn't forgotten the music. He locked it away. She began walking the north wing of the center more often, coffee in hand, heels echoing like a metronome through marble corridors. She wasn't sure why. One morning, she found him mopping outside the music room. She stopped. "Do you play?" she asked gently, not into the closed door. He didn't look at her. "Not anymore. I saw the video," she said. "So did half the country." He dipped the mop, wringed it out. Calm, steady. "I clean floors," he said, not bitter, just honest. "You touched that piano like it was alive." "No, ma'am," he replied. "I touched it like it was a memory, and I don't touch what I can't carry anymore." She didn't know how to respond, so she just left the coffee and walked away. Above them, in a small apartment that smelled of old paper and dreams, 9-year-old Lily Grant sat at her piano. It was chipped and out of tune, a gift from a retired teacher who heard her hum a melody once and swore she was gifted. Lily didn't play music. She saw it, heard colors and chords, shapes and notes. She was untrained, but when her fingers touched the keys, magic came out. She wasn't allowed to perform, her heart delicate, they said. Applause constrained it, so she played for no one except her father. He stood by her doorway that evening as she played Chopin her own way, and when she finished, he whispered, voice soft, "You are flying." She beamed. "Dad, do you think music can fix broken things?" He knelt beside her, brushed her hair back. "It used to," he said quietly, "but sometimes fixing costs too much." "Like what?" "Like remembering what you lost." She didn't understand it all, but she took his hand anyway. "I think it's okay to remember." That night, Landon sat by her piano long after she slept. He wanted to play, just one piece, one note, but his hands wouldn't move. Not yet. Online. Pianists mocked the challenge, posting Liszt renditions with the caption, "Where's my kiss?" But Harper didn't care. None of them mattered. She cared about the man who walked away from applause, who looked at a Steinway the way some look at gravestones. She found herself drawn to the music room once more. Landon wasn't there, but something was. On the bench sat a folded piece of paper, carefully placed. No name, no flourish, just 5 quiet words. "I don't play for kisses." Harper didn't smile. She exhaled. And in that moment, she didn't feel like a billionaire. She felt like a woman who had unknowingly summoned a ghost back to life, and maybe, just maybe, she wasn't so cold after all. It was on a quiet Sunday morning that Luna first heard the sound that would alter the rhythm of her life. Her father had left for errands, those humble rituals of their shared solitude, a grocery run, picking up prescriptions, the errands of a man who carried sorrow like a second skin. Luna trusted to be alone for a few hours. Never caused trouble. Trouble wasn't her way. Music was. The apartment above the Harper Lynn Cultural Center was mostly still, save for the murmur of city life trickling through half-cracked windows and the faint voice of a podcast playing on the radio. Luna hadn't meant to listen. The Interview with Harper Lynn, the elusive CEO of the foundation, was merely background noise while Luna bent over her notebook, penciling down fragments of melody. Then a line pierced through her reverie. He didn't even flinch, Harper said, her voice half amused, half haunted. I told him, if you can play Liszt, I'll kiss you right here. And he just kept polishing the piano, like it was spun from glass. Luna paused. Something in the way the name Liszt slipped from Harper's lips, an ache wrapped in elegance, rippled through her. She grabbed her tablet, typed it in La Campanella. The recording burst through the speakers with ferocity. Notes flew like birds startled into flight, climbing and spiraling with controlled madness. It was joyful and desperate, chaotic and divine. Luna's breath caught. She placed her small fingers on the keys of their battered old piano. The ivory was chipped, the tuning imperfect, but none of that mattered. She began to play downstairs. Harper had returned early to the cultural center seeking a moment of stillness. Before the board meeting storm, her assistant had handed her another article. The third that morning. Is Harper Lynn mocking veterans? The headline sliced. Words like elitist, tone-deaf, at worst buzzed in her ears. She had meant no harm. It had been a joke, flung casually in what she thought was a private moment. But the world didn't forgive easily, especially not when the target wore heels. And success died as she wandered the corridors in search of silence. A sound stopped her cold piano. Not recorded, not background ambience. Real, raw, human, drawn upward. Each note tugging at her like a silken thread. Harper climbed the stairs, and when she reached the door of the janitor's apartment, humble and unexpectedly clean, she saw her, a child, unkempt, hair, feet swinging from the bench, fingers dancing. It wasn't perfect. Her hands were too small for some chords. The instrument was aging, but the girl played with soul, with heartbreak, with euphoria. Harper watched, breath trapped in her chest. She hadn't seen music like that since, no, not ever. Her own father had been a pianist, but never for her, only for the audience, the applause, the prestige. Harper had learned early how to clap at the right moments, how to smile for patrons, how to pretend she didn't crave music meant for her. This child, Luna, Harper would learn, wasn't performing. She was becoming. Do you know what that is? Harper asked. Stepping softly, Luna turned, surprised but unafraid. It's Liszt. I think. I heard it once. On the radio. You said it. I looked it up. It was beautiful. Harper blinked. Once. You're a prodigy, she whispered. The girl tilted her head. I'm just Luna. And Harper smiled, genuine, unguarded, the first time in weeks. Then the door burst open. Landon. His face shifted from confusion to fury in a single heartbeat. What are you doing? Here. Harper backed up instinctively. I heard her playing. I didn't mean to intrude. You heard her because you were listening where you don't belong. Luna slid off the bench. Daddy, not now, Landon said, his voice sharp before softening. Go to your room, baby. She didn't cry, but something dimmed in her eyes. As she obeyed, when the door closed behind her, Harper faced Landon fully. I don't know what game this is, he growled, but I won't let you make her a spectacle. I wasn't, Harper said, gentle. She's not a performance. She's a revelation. She's a child with a fragile heart. He snapped. You don't know what that music does to her. She looked alive. She looked exposed. And I won't let this world take from her what it took from me. The words landed with the weight of war. Harper didn't argue. In that moment, she saw not a janitor, but a soldier, a father, a man scarred by unseen battles. I'm not here to change her, Harper said softly. I think she's already changing me. Landon closed the door, gently but firmly. That night, Harper couldn't sleep. The wine didn't help. Neither did the numbers in her spreadsheets or the pages of her half-finished novel. Luna's face haunted her. So did Landon's grief. She called in a favor the next morning. Her network, a web of favors, debts, and quiet respect had reach. One called to a contact at Juilliard. I need everything you can find on a pianist named Landon Grant. active around 20 years ago. Liszt's specialization, the silence on the line, broke with a low whistle. Harper, you're not digging through talent. You're digging through legend. By noon, the truth lay spread before her. Landon Grant, the boy with lightning in his veins, played Carnegie Hall at 22. They said people wept when he touched the Steinway. And then, silence. No encore. No farewell. Just gone down an article. Prodigy turns patriot. Pianist joins army after mother's death. Another. Roadside IED in Mosul. SKT. Landon Grant survives explosion. Harper stared at the image. Younger. Unburdened. Caught mid-flight on the keys. The war wasn't just behind his eyes. It lived in his hands. That night, she walked the cultural center like a ghost. Past locked doors. Past darkness. Until she saw light under one room, a forgotten practice chamber. She stood in the doorway. He was there. Alone. No mob. No Luna. Just him and the piano. He wasn't playing. Not really. His right hand hovered over the keys. Trembling, then he pressed one. Then another. A ghost melody. A whisper from a past too sharp to name. I told myself I'd never touch this. Again. He murmured. Not to her, to the piano, or maybe to someone far beyond the room. It was an injury, he said. They fixed the nerves. I could still play. A Liszt run slipped from his fingers, slower, hesitant, but beautiful. It was her, he said, Luna's mother. He nodded. She was the real musician. I just played louder. Harper didn't interrupt. She made me promise no stage lights for Luna, only music. If she wanted it. Never pressure. Never pain. His voice cracked. She got sick. Fast. Heart failure. She asked me to play for her in the ICU. I couldn't. I looked at my hands and thought, what's the point of brilliance if it can't save her? Silence. She died to silence. Harper sat beside him. Just there. Quiet. The song she asked for. He whispered, La Campanella. Harper touched the piano lid. I don't think it ended. Not really. He looked at her. For a girl to hear Liszt once and play it by ear, that's not chance. That's legacy. He looked away. She's sick, too, like her mother. Harper inhaled sharply. She doesn't know. Not fully. She just thinks she gets tired. That's why I keep her world small. But she's not small, Harper said. He didn't answer. He didn't need to die in the hush between them. Something flickered. Not music. Not yet. But maybe. The Harper Lind Foundation gala shimmered under warm Edison bulbs. All glass ceilings and curated elegance. Waiters glided. Donors preened. And at the center, like a cathedral relic, stood the Steinway. Harper, statuesque in black satin, stood at the entrance like judgment in heels. She wasn't just hosting. She was summoning. Her eyes found him. Landon stood in the shadows. Dark jacket, crooked tie, an outsider. Mr. Grant, she said, stepping beside him. You know what tonight needs. And he did. He didn't turn. Not at first. Just stood there, jaw clenched, breath shallow. The weight of yours pressing into his spine. Let me guess. He murmured resentful. Tired. A miracle. A reminder, she corrected softly, stepping closer, of why music is still worth believing in. He exhaled, slow and jagged. This isn't about music. It's about spectacle. Harper's eyes, steady as they met his, held no argument, only truth. And sometimes, spectacle saves lives. She tilted her chin toward the stage, where spotlights danced across polished wood. I told them, she added, the faintest glint in her voice, that our next performer once made Carnegie Hall fall silent with a single trill. Landon's head whipped around. You didn't. I did. She raised her hand before he could protest. You can leave if you want. No one will stop you. Her voice, soft now, trembled with something too fragile to name. But they'll remember that silence. She turned and walked away. The ballroom dimmed to a reverent hush. The announcer strode out beneath the lights. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. We are honored to present a very special guest. A man who once reminded the world that Liszt was not just music, but fire. Please welcome Landon Grant. Applause thundered. Cameras surged forward. Phones rose like ladders at a vigil. But the stage remained empty. The piano bench, bathed in gold light, sat untouched in the shadows of the exit hallway. Landon's jaw locked. He turned his back on the stage, on the memory, on the chance. He was halfway through the door. Bah! The word rang out like a bell cutting through snow. A whisper, a plea. Luna stood just off stage. Her dress, soft sky blue. Her braid a mirror of her mother's hands long gone. She wasn't supposed to be here, but she was smiling, hopeful, braver than he'd ever been. If you play, she whispered, trembling, maybe Mom will hear it. His heart stopped. She wasn't asking for spectacle. She wasn't asking for legacy. She was asking for presence, for memory, for love. He looked past her, past the crowd, past the noise to the piano glowing like a sacred altar, at Harper, standing at the edge of the ballroom, her hands folded, her eyes shimmering. He took a step, then another, and then slowly, almost reverently, he walked toward the piano. The room inhaled, sharp and collective, a silence so deep it had weight. Landon approached the Steinway like a man returning to a grave. He didn't sit, didn't play. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a cloth, and began to clean, one key at a time, not briskly, not performatively, with reverence. As though each key bore scars. As though he was dressing wounds. The audience shifted, uncertain. Some leaned in. Others blinked tears they didn't understand. The cameras rolled on, silently capturing every trembling breath, every flick of polish, every sacred pause. He stopped at middle C, held his thumb against it not to press, but to feel its pulse, its memory. And then, nothing. He stood, closed the lid. And walked away. No music. No encore. Just silence, a silence louder than any ovation. Backstage, Harper found him by the service elevator, his back to the wall, lungs dragging air like he was learning to breathe again. She began. I couldn't. He rasped. I'm sorry. She shook her head. You didn't have to. He turned, eyes raw. Then why? She hesitated. Then, softly, because I needed to know if your silence meant surrender or something else. Landon looked away. I'm not ready. I know. She stepped close enough to see the fractures he never let show. I just needed them to see, she whispered, what it looks like when a man touches a piano like it's the last thing in the world. That still deserves tenderness. His breath caught. Harper offered a sad smile. Maybe that kiss wasn't a joke. After all, he didn't laugh. He didn't speak. But his gaze met hers, not in disbelief, in recognition. Something had shifted. Not everything, but something. That night, a video spread across the internet like fire through dry grass. A man, silent at a piano, wiping it instead of playing it. No explanation, no dialogue, just a caption, the kiss she promised. The silence he delivered, millions watched. Thousands commented. Only a few understood. It wasn't about the music he didn't play. It was about the daughter he did it for, and the woman who no longer found that silence cold. It began with a 37-second clip, grainy footage from a cracked security camera inside the Harper Lynn Performing Arts Center. A girl, Luna, at the piano, her fingers moving like moths drawn to flame. She was radiant, fragile, and entirely at home. It should have been beautiful, but someone edited it. Just enough. Subtitles, damning and cynical, appeared beneath the frame. CEO Harper Lynn exploiting sick child for another terminal illness. Turned into a fundraiser. The internet did what it does. It devoured the lie. Reddit tore it apart. Twitter screamed betrayal. Influencers spat outrage into their cameras. One tweet, Harper Lynn, CEO or heartless puppet master, garnered nearly 90,000 retweets overnight. Harper became a villain. Old videos resurfaced, cold boardroom speeches, corporate layoffs, a Christmas Eve firing. Context didn't matter. Truth didn't stand a chance. By morning, Every major news network had her face beneath a headline, "Corporate Greed Meets Disabled Child." And at precisely 10:30 a.m., her assistant entered with words that shattered her world. "They've suspended your authority pending internal review." Effective immediately, Harper didn't flinch, didn't beg, just turned to the skyline. Steel and glass and sky, uncaring as ever. "They're eating me alive," she whispered. That afternoon, she sat in her office alone, her badge revoked, her laptop surrendered. The space that once made her feel powerful now felt like exile. But worse than the punishment was the silence. No one asked her side. No one cared that Luna had walked into that room alone, that no one knew she could play, that the piano had called to her like a heartbeat. No one knew that Harper had cried, that for one breathtaking moment, she hadn't seen PR metrics or stockholders. She'd seen a little girl who reminded her of herself, longing for a father song. But villains don't get nuance. In the world of hashtags, silence always screams louder than truth. The knock on the door came softly. She didn't answer. It opened anyway. Landon. Same boots, same jacket, same quiet presence. "If you're here to scold me," she murmured, not turning, "there's a line downstairs." "I'm not." Silence. Then, gently, she cried when she saw the video. "Luna." Harper turned slowly. Her heart stuttered. She thought everyone hated her. Landon stepped closer. "I told her the internet doesn't hate her. It just doesn't know her." His voice wavered. The cracks showed. "I told her you didn't make her do anything, that she played because she wanted to." "Did you believe that?" Harper asked. He looked her straight in the eye. "I'm asking you now. Did you?" Her voice broke. "Yes." "Then I believe her, which means I believe you." She looked at him, stunned, not by his presence, but by his faith. No speeches, no declarations, just a man choosing to trust again. "You shouldn't have to defend me," she whispered. "I'm not," he said. "I'm defending her belief in you." He turned, paused. "And for what it's worth, you looked a lot more human, wiping tears, then giving TED Talks." A beat passed, then another, and Harper, once corporate titan, now the internet's villain, laughed. Soft, broken, but she laughed. That night, she lay on her couch, staring into the quiet. Her apartment felt curated, lifeless. She reached for an old phone, one she hadn't touched in years. It still held the last voicemail her father had left her. She listened. And for the first time, cried not from anger, but because someone had finally seen her, because a little girl had played Liszt with a heart purer than any concert pianist, because a janitor had reminded her how it felt to matter. Outside, the world roared in outrage. Inside, something softened, and down the corridor of a silent hospital, Landon sat beside his daughter's bed. She slept. One hand clutching the tiny figurine of a piano. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You did nothing wrong, baby," he whispered, "and one day they'll see." He looked out the window at the blinking lights of a city too loud to listen, and so will she. Hours later, with surgery at dawn, Landon sat outside her door. Still in his janitor uniform. Only his eyes betrayed the truth, those quiet, haunted eyes glistening with unshed tears, not fixed on the keys, but on the gentle rise and fall of Luna's chest. As the final note of the lullaby whispered in the stillness, suspended like a fragile hope in midair, he let it linger. Then silence, a silence so deep even the machines in the room seemed to pause, as if reverent. He closed the piano lid, softly, reverently, making sure it didn't click. He didn't speak, just stood, crossed the small room, and knelt beside her. With trembling fingers, he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and murmured, "Sleep, baby girl. You're not alone." Even in sleep, her fingers twitched as though some part of her soul, buried deep in a dream, had heard everything. The nurse on duty would later say she didn't know what sound she'd heard that night, only that it hadn't come from human hands. It sounded like light being poured into a cracked world. Downstairs, the janitor would confess he felt his heart stir, in a way it hadn't in years, like a long-dead ember suddenly catching flame. The security footage from that hallway would be corrupted, thanks to a flicker in the breaker. No visual record remained. No one remembered except for a little girl sleeping in room 312. Who would carry that melody in her bones forever? Outside, the city lights blinked in erratic Morse code, as if trying to speak to a sky that had stopped listening. Inside, a man left the room, dragging a weathered piano behind him with slow, deliberate steps. He didn't wait for applause. He left no note, but the music remained. Inside a girl, inside a room, inside a world undeserving, yet desperate for it. The letter was never meant to be opened. Not really. It had rested on Harper's desk for 3 days neat, quiet, tucked inside a cream-colored envelope sealed with the Harper Lynn Foundation's wax insignia. A formality, really. There was no return address, no subject line, just his name, handwritten like a prayer spoken in secret. Landon Grant. She had rewritten it 3 times. Even now, as it traveled through the hollow, fluorescent veins of the company's mail chute, she hoped it would disappear, like the music she had once adored but had taught herself to loathe. Inside, the words were simple, yet each syllable. While reopening, when I was 9, I asked my father to play for me just once. He was a concert pianist. The world called him genius, prodigy, maestro, until the day my mother died. After that, he never touched the piano again. I remember, years later, passing the music room. The door was cracked. He sat at the piano, not playing, just staring at it as if the keys had betrayed him. That was the day I began to hate the piano, because it had taken from me the last part of him I had left. I climbed every rung of this company trying to replace melody with metrics, silence with control, but I never found what I'd lost until I saw you. Not when you played, when you cleaned it, like you were laying flowers on a grave everyone else had forgotten. That's when I realized I never hated the piano. I hated the silence, the kind that steals. I'm not asking for a reply. This isn't an invitation. Just a thank you for reminding me what love used to sound like. She didn't sign it. She didn't have to. The wax was still warm when it landed in the mailroom. By morning, it had been slipped beneath the janitor's locker door by someone who had no idea what they were carrying. No one saw Landon open it. No one knew if he ever did, but Harper watched every corridor, every elevator, every passing face for 5 days, hoping. Then there was the church, an ancient cathedral clinging to the edge of the arts district, an annual charity concert, the kind attended by aging patrons, forgotten composers, and believers who still thought music might hold the sacred. Harper had come out of duty more than devotion. Her name still clung to scandalous headlines, though the public's rage had moved on, like clouds passing over. She sat in the second pew, spine straight, heart unsure. She didn't expect him to come, until she heard it. A whisper behind her, a ripple in the air. Someone stood at the sanctuary's back, shoulders broad beneath a charcoal coat, hair tied back, a black case in his hand. Landon. He walked slowly, not down the aisle, but around the edge of the sanctuary, like a man stepping into a place he no longer believed he was allowed to enter. No spotlight followed. No applause greeted him. He moved toward the modest grand piano on the side stage, untouched the entire evening. Harper stood before she realized it. Her breath caught, her eyes fixed on the case, the Steinway, his Steinway, the one he had played at Carnegie, the one everyone believed destroyed or lost to the flames of grief. He placed it down with reverence, opened the lid, ran a cloth across the keys. Then he sat, not facing the audience, but the altar, eyes closed. No announcement, no flourish, just the first trembling note, a breath in winter. Liszt Consolation No. 3, a piece to intimate for performance, the sacred for applause. Every note unfolded like a letter never sent, a memory touched gently, a prayer. No grandeur, only grace. The audience still. Even the restless child at the back went quiet. Even the chill of the old organ seemed to pause. Harper watched, not a man playing music, but a man speaking to ghosts, to memories, to something holy. His fingers moved not to impress, but to remember, to forgive. to let go. And in that moment, Harper understood the letter was never an imitation. But this playing was his answer. Not in ink, in sound. When the last note faded, the chapel held its breath. No one clapped. They couldn't. It would have shattered the miracle. Landon closed the lid, slowly rose for one fleeting second. His gaze found Harper's. There were no words, but there was everything. Then he turned and walked away. Harper didn't speak, couldn't, but her heart whispered, "Come back," and in the stillness, she believed. He heard. There were no programs handed out that night. No velvet curtains, just candles, wood, stone, and people who still believed music could speak when language failed. And then he came. No tux, no polish. Just a man in a worn shirt, sleeves rolled, collar open, soul bare. Landon Grant. He did not bow, did not scan the crowd. He walked past the velvet aisles and sat, quiet, present, as if confessing. He played Liebestraum No. 3, not for glory, for healing, for her, for Harper, for the silence that had haunted them both. The music didn't perform. It forgave. It remembered. It wept. And Harper, she broke, silently, tears like absolution. Not just hers, a child's tears long buried. The longing of a girl who once begged her father to play and never heard him answer. But now, someone was answering. No one recorded it, except one old journalist with a shaky hand and a half-broken phone. It was uploaded with no tags, no title, just a caption, "For those who still believe music can heal." It spread. Musicians reposted it. Veterans called it the sound of my pain. Mothers wrote, "He plays the way I wish someone loved my child." Children listened, deeply, as if hearing their own hearts speak for the first time. Harper declined the board's offer. No reinstatement, no title, no corner office. She looked at the empire she had built, glass, steel, silence, and walked away. All she carried was a small, worn envelope. Inside was Luna's thank you card, scrawled in blue crayon, folded 3 times, misspelled. Perfect. It was never just about music. It was about a man who had once locked away his heart and found the courage to open it again. And the sound it made when it opened was music. On the front of the envelope, a child's crayon scrawling even and bright read, "To the lady who listened." 6 months later, in a converted warehouse on the east side of the city, music drifted out of open windows like sunlight through dust. It wasn't polished, it wasn't precise, but it was real, honest, joyful, the kind of sound that vibrated straight through bone and into the soul. The organization was called Silent, and listening, a name born not of irony, but of intention. Its mission was to nurture the unheard, children with rare auditory perception, those who didn't read notes so much as feel them. These were the children the world often misunderstood, kids dismissed as unruly or slow when in fact, their senses danced to different rhythms. Harper didn't wear power suits anymore, no silk blouses or designer heels. Now she wore jeans frayed at the knees, old sneakers scuffed at the toes, and kept her golden hair tied back in a loose ponytail that curled and frizzed in the California sun. But her eyes, those once guarded, glassy corporate eyes, had never looked clearer. And Luna, she wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a founder, a voice, a light. She stood at the front of a room filled with 20 children, some tapping erratic rhythms on tabletops, others humming tunes that collided midair, and she smiled. A deep, grounded smile, the kind worn by someone who understood that chaos is just music still searching for its melody. Luna no longer played to impress. She played to connect, to give back what had once saved her, to pass on the healing. One afternoon, as Harper swept beneath the old upright piano in the main hall, her room caught the edge of something soft. A folded slip of paper, no name, no handwriting, just a single line of typed words. The most powerful music is not what we play, but what we choose to share. She didn't need a signature. She knew who it was from. Landon hadn't been seen since the opening ceremony. No headlines, no Instagram posts, no fanfare, But sometimes, just after the last child had left and the building settled into quiet, Harper would hear the faintest ripple of a chord, a Liszt arpeggio, played so gently it could have been mistaken for the wind, and she would smile, because sometimes when something has saved you, you don't chase it, you pass it on. Weeks later, a small envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside, a sleek black flash drive and a single note typed on thick parchment. Play it, but only if the room is quiet enough to listen. Harper waited. She waited until Luna was tucked under her blanket, breath slow and peaceful, until the staff had gone home, until the only sounds left were the hum of the fridge and the creak of the old floor. Beneath her bare feet, she pressed play. It wasn't Liszt, not even classical. It was a lullaby. 3 chords, to hands and a voice warm, untrained, heartbreakingly human, singing simple words with aching tenderness. You don't have to be loud to be heard. A year passed. The city didn't change in the way that made headlines. It changed in quieter, more beautiful ways. Laughter lingered longer in the park. Strangers paused to listen to street musicians. A local news segment aired title, "The Music That Found Us." That afternoon, the sun hung low over the city park, casting honey light across. A patchwork of folding chairs, picnic blankets, and half-empty lemonade cups. There was no red carpet, no velvet rope, just a hand-painted sign held by grinning kids that read, "Come listen with us." Behind the stage, if you could call a wooden platform a stage, Harper stood quietly. The once feared executive, now dressed in a simple white cotton dress and flat sandals. Her blonde hair hung in a loose braid down her back, and in her lap, a clipboard filled with messy schedules and smeared snack vouchers. But her eyes, they were steady, clear, like someone who had finally stopped running. On stage, Luna adjusted her seat, nodded to her father, and began. It wasn't Liszt. It was hers. A lullaby she composed herself, soft chord changes, warm, meandering notes, and melodies that rose like whispers and drifted like clouds beside her. Landon sat at the piano, not leading, not performing, just supporting, like a steady current beneath a boat that knew how to float on its own. No spotlight, no clapping mid-song, just music and listening and presence. And that was more than enough. Backstage, Harper pressed a hand over her chest. It wasn't pride, exactly. It was something older. Something like forgiveness folding itself into gratitude. As the final note faded, the crowd didn't erupt. They exhaled. And then they stood, slowly. No applause at first. Just rising, like some invisible part of them had been lifted, and they needed to meet the music halfway in the air. After the bow, Luna bounded off the stage. Her forehead glistened with sweat, and joy beamed from her like sunlight. She flew past the lemonade table, past the balloon arch, straight into Harper's arms. "You saw?" She grinned. "I saw." Harper laughed, heartful. Then Luna leaned, in mischief dancing in her eyes. "Boss says you still owe him a kiss from that Liszt night." Harper froze, then laughed harder than she had in months. "Oh, does he now?" Luna just shrugged, turned, and raced off toward the food truck line like she'd delivered a royal decree, and left the court to sort it out. Landon approached slowly, dabbing his hands with a cloth as he always did after touching a piano. Same faded shirt, same quiet steps. But he stood taller now, not as a man seeking the stage, but as one who'd learned he didn't need it to matter. He stopped a few feet from her, a glint of playfulness in his eye. "She makes things up," he said dryly. "You know, kids. She's not wrong." Harper replied, lifting one eyebrow. They stood in silence, the summer breeze brushing softly between them. Then Harper reached for his hand, the same one that once scrubbed floors in her corporate tower, the same one that tucked the little girl into bed night after night, the same one that played Liszt not to impress, but to heal. She lifted it and kissed it. Not for show, not out of pity, but with reverence for the man who had once played in war and who now chose to play